Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started here, in part because we're live streaming this to those who could not come here tonight, and so we want to stay a little bit on schedule as best as we can. So I believe the live stream has started, so for those of you who are joining us online, welcome as well. I'm Brad Rollins. I'm the director of the School of Media and Journalism. I want to welcome all of you here this evening. We're so glad that you're here. I know many of you have traveled quite a distance to be here as well. And so we really do appreciate the opportunity to gather together and celebrate this auspicious occasion of 100 years of the Herald, the student newspaper, basically the news of record for Arkansas State University. And it's so appropriate we're holding this celebration in Centennial Hall, right? It's 100 years of the Herald in Centennial Hall, so that's perfect. As I mentioned, we have a number of very distinguished individuals here, some who are going to be sharing some of their experiences and thoughts about journalism later on our panel. But I did want to ask a few people to stand and be recognized. If I could ask all formal faculty advisors for the Herald, if you would not mind standing and being recognized. Marlon's already standing, so, and Dr. Lily Fears and Roy Oker. I think Dr. Gamble he's standing already as well, and Gil Fowler. Gil, did you stand? So Gil, I know, was also advisor of it. And our current advisor, Professor Sam Combs, who's currently advising the Herald. So, we also want to recognize two individuals who are no longer with us, but who advised the Herald for a very, very long time. The first is Tex Plunkett, who is really the father of the journalism program here at Arkansas State University, and he was advisor for a number of years. In fact, he was advisor until Joel Gamble took over as advisor. And the other is Bonnie Thrasher, who was advisor for many, many years through the 90s and a good portion of the 2000 decade. And so we want to recognize and honor them this evening as well. I'd also like to ask, we can give them applause, sure. I'd like to ask all former Herald editors, if you wouldn't mind standing and be recognized this evening as well. And while you're standing, how about anybody who ever worked with the Herald, took photographs, wrote stories, or if you'll all stand as well. Very good. All right. I'd also like to recognize a few of the university officials that we have with us this evening. So we have the Chancellor, Dr. Dampis, here this evening, and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and the Provost, Dr. Alan Utter, Dr. Erica Chudy, the Vice Chancellor for Advancement, Dr. Lonnie Williams, who's our Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Community Engagement. I'm not done yet, sorry. Dr. Bill Smith, who's our Vice Chancellor for Marketing and Communication. Dr. Carl Cates is the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Communication. And so we want to recognize them and welcome them to be here tonight as well. Before I turn over the mic to Dr. Dampis to say a few words, I know not all of you are going to have the opportunity to stay with us the entire evening, so I want to make you aware of a few things. One is we have this poster of one of the most famous issues of the Herald, which is when ASU became a university, ASU a reality. There's a great story behind this issue, and it probably will get shared tonight up here up front as well as multiple other places. But we have copies of this available for anybody who would like to take one of these with them. We also have for you, we have a water bottle and a coaster, but we're asking that you just take one or the other until supplies last with these. So, okay, the posters for everybody. And we also have t-shirts if you want to commemorate tonight with a t-shirt. These are for sale. That's to try and recoup some of the cost of this evening. So But these are for sale for $15 and available at the table as well. So if you have to leave a little bit early, please make sure you pick up your free stuff, and if you like, also pick up a T-shirt. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Kelly Dampis, our Chancellor, to come up and say a few words.
Thank you all. Thank you, Brad, for introducing me and inviting me to be here tonight. Thank you all for being here. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this great event, a great opportunity to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Herald, what used to be called the Aggie Herald. And so one of the things that I have loved about coming to Arkansas State, this is actually my 5th year here, but even before I came here, when I was preparing to deliver what was asked of me, a vision statement for the university as a chancellor cabinet, and how presumptuous it is for someone to ask and for someone to accept the opportunity to give a vision statement to a university you've never been to before. But to do that, prepare for that, I actually read I'll just project. Here we're back. So 3 nights ago, I was actually performing in the Masked Singer event. Had the same problem. The mics went out. Just as Beth and I were singing, I had the time of my life. And so I couldn't hear her. It was a disaster. So there you go. So preparing to come to Arkansas State to deliver a vision statement as a chancellor cabinet, the yearbooks that are actually archived online, and back then, back in the early days, the yearbooks were called the Yearling, and I wish I'd known that you could make a living being a historian, because I love history, I love reading this, and I continue to read the Yearling regularly just to kind of remind myself of the history about how But I remember reading in the 1922 Yearling about the things that were happening, and that's kind of when we started feeling like a university. We've been around for a while, and that was the first year that the yearbook referenced the Aggie Herald, and there's a story in the 1922 Yearling about the new newspaper, and they described what was in the newspaper. Oftentimes it was jokes that were fit to be printed. Some of them were probably not fit to be printed at the time. There were papers that students had written for classes that were published in the paper. But the editor-in-chief back then was a gentleman named Claude Beard, and I think about what Claude would have thought 100 years later to see what has become of the Herald and the young people who continue to work so hard. So they called the Aggie Herald back in the day. And I think about the term herald refers back to someone who brings important news. The subtitle of the Herald was "The Boosters of the Wonder State," and so I thought that was kind of an interesting idea there. That wasn't just the Arkansas State College or the school here, but also the entire state they were trying to boost. This paper came out every 2 weeks, and there was a faculty sponsor for every issue. My sense is that there was a different faculty sponsor for each issue, and I do recognize the important role that faculty sponsors had over the years, so it's great to see so many of them here as well. And Sam and I have a lot of communication since she's been an editor-in-chief about her young people there. She actually sent 2 reporters to come interview me after I got the job, and these 2 young ladies came and grilled me for like 2 hours, and then they wrote the lovely, I was so nervous when they left, Maya and Destiny. They were in there for, my assistant came in and said, are you okay? And I said, no, we're almost done here. 2 hours. But they wrote the most lovely article after, and so they learned well. They learned their trade well. And what's interesting, there was another story that came out not long after that. My wife was out of town. I'd gone to a football game, and we came back late, like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I got into the house, and I guess I was hungry, and so I got a bowl of cereal out at 5 in the morning. I'm eating a bowl of cornflakes in the kitchen, and there's a knock on the door, and I look out, and there's a police officer there. And I guess I'd set off the alarm and didn't know that I'd set off the alarm, and the police came over, and it was quite concerned that the chancellor's house was being broken into. And so he had to show me how to turn off. Beth was the alarm, not me. But the Herald actually wrote a story about that, about alarm going on. It was like crime of the week or something like that. And the story was the alarm went off, and the police went out there, and it was a false alarm. And they closed by saying, well, of course, who in the world would rob such a nice man like the chancellor? So I thought, I'm going to like this Herald staff. And so for the most part, they kept that end of the bargain up. Well, you know, the Herald is intended, and school papers have always been intended to tell the story. In fact, the Yearling said, when they reported this, he said, anything of any importance at all appears in our school paper. And I love that line, things that happen here. You know, one of the sad things is that the yearbook has gone by the wayside. People have stopped buying yearbooks, and we don't have a yearbook anymore. And the history of Arkansas State is slowly fading if we're not careful, but the Herald continues to tell that story. And we're to talk to the students over here about my interest in creating a stronger archiving system so we can continue to keep the story of Arkansas State living through what's being done by the Herald. The Herald tells the current story day by day, month by month, year by year, and it's so valuable. But I will tell you, it's not just about telling our story. It also gives a rich learning opportunity for the young men and women who've come here who may not have intended to get into journalism, but through some random event ended up on the Herald staff and developed a passion for writing, for thinking, for being critical, and learning those critical thinking skills, going to interview somebody who is maybe the chancellor or a dean or someone in a position of power, and learning about the power of the press, and speaking to power and speaking about power and describing what's going on. Not only are they telling the story of Arkansas State, they're also providing a rich learning experience for our students over the years. And many students have left the Herald and gone on to have storied careers because of their start here at Arkansas State and through the Herald. And I'm so proud of what that has done and what that continues to do. The young people who are here today that are working on the Herald, who just worked so hard to put together this beautiful edition. Congratulations to you. Let me just acknowledge the students who put together the 100th anniversary edition. You guys please stand up so we can recognize you guys. Mention Pradeep. Where's Pradeep? Printing here, and we have his printing team is here. I tell you, we have the best printed newspaper in the world. I mean, it's not just the best school paper. There's no better quality printing that we do here. So thank you to you and your team, Pradeep, as well. So thank you all for being here, and congratulations. I'm going to duck out a little bit because I have to go to the Symphonic Winds concert after this. It's going to take a while, but if I leave early, Roy, where's Roy? There you are. It's not because of you. The Symphonic Winds, but look forward to hearing some of the questions. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Dr. Dampis, for the... I'd like to invite Dr. Joel Gamble to come up on the stage, if he would, for a moment. As he's coming up, one of the things we decided to do to honor and recognize 100 years of the Herald was to also honor someone who spent about half of the career of the Herald, half the time of the Herald was under the stewardship or under some kind of guidance from one individual, and that's Dr. Joel Gamble. He was first he was a Herald editor, and then later on he was advisor to the Herald. He later became the department chair of the Department of Journalism, and he's influenced literally thousands of lives and had a great influence on the good of journalism. So we wanted to do something that would honor him, but at the same time would also launch careers of future journalists, because I don't think there's any other way of honoring Dr. Gamble besides looking at the future and the future of journalism and rewarding future journalists for their good works and efforts. So we asked our friends and alumni if they wouldn't help us endow a scholarship in Joel Gamble's name, and I'm very happy to announce that that scholarship has been endowed. So I'd like to invite... Other people want to get further.
I really appreciate what to say. I was listening to you and trying to watch the video also because I saw a lot of people that I had as students. And I wanted to get around and see everybody, and I see some of you now, and I'm delighted to have my wife, Donna, who is here, and I guess is the right word, Paul. Anyway, but Amy was telling me he plays tennis. I love tennis. Anyway, I don't want to mention too many people because, in fact, I don't want to mention any. I'll leave somebody out. But I see several of them, and I really hope you come out and see me before we leave tonight. But I also want to say for this momentous occasion and the scholarship. He was the one who came up with the idea, I believe, at least. Anyway, I appreciate everything that has been done, and I'm going to get out of here. But I miss you. Thank you.
I really could take no credit for this because all I had to do is work with Dr. Schutte and the alumni office and just say, we'd like to just get the word out that we're going to endow a scholarship, and you know the support just came pouring in. One of my favorite parts of this semester, in fact, was reading the emails that people would send along and say, hey, I'm sending. Pleasure to work together to put this scholarship. And the good news is we have enough money in the scholarship that we'll be able to offer it for the first time next fall. So we'll have a deserving student for the scholarship next fall. At this time, we're going to move over to having our panel. And so Dr. Lily Fears, who is the faculty coordinator for the Multimedia Journalism Program, she's going to be the moderator of the panel, and I'm going to let her make introductions of the panel. But if the panelists, I believe, if you'll come forward and have a seat at the table, and I'll hand over the podium and the microphone over to Dr. Fears.
I did. That's what it is. We're in order. Okay. We're in order. You the baby. Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's our pleasure to have you. As Dr. Rollins said, I'm
Lily Fears, Dr. Lily Fears. I'm the coordinator of the Multimedia Journalism program here in the School of Media and Journalism at ASU. I also served as advisor for the Herald from 1990 to 1993, and I was a reporter and member of the Herald staff from 1982 to 1984. On behalf of the faculty and staff of the School of Media and Journalism and the current Herald staff, I'd also like to welcome you to this 100-year celebration of the Herald newspaper. Tonight's panel, titled What I Learned from the Herald and Why Journalism Matters More Than Ever, is the final official event of the 100-year celebration. So again, we are happy that you could join us. It is my pleasure to moderate tonight's panel discussion with our distinguished panelists. They are no strangers to the journalism program here at ASU, and they're certainly no strangers to the Herald. And I believe everyone, Roy, were you an editor or at one point of the? Yes. Okay, so everyone here was an editor at one point during this 100-year history. And so before we begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce each one of them and tell you a little bit about what they've accomplished since leaving the Herald and Arkansas State. And when I tell you it is a little, it is a little. I tried to, they all told me, just use what you wanted to use, and that was very hard to do. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start to my immediate left, Mr. Roy Okajoker Jr. I've been working on that. Roy is a native of Hot Springs. He started working for the Centennial Record and the New Era newspapers in Hot Springs after his junior year in high school. He earned a bachelor's degree in journalism from Arkansas State University and wrote the story for the student newspaper's special edition when ASU's university status was approved. In 2013, Roy was named one of ASU's distinguished alums. He also has a master's degree in journalism from University of Oklahoma and served as an instructor in journalism at ASU and advisor to the Herald from 1970 to 1975. He has also taught journalism at Arkansas College, now Lyon College in Batesville, and was named Arkansas Educator of the Year by the Arkansas Press Association in 1995. The recipient of more than 30 State Press Association awards, he has worked as a journalist at a number of papers that include serving as managing editor for the Batesville Daily Guard from 1975 to 1988, and as managing editor and editor of the Courier at Russellville. In 2001, he became editor of the Jonesboro Sun and retired as editor in February 2012. Since his retirement from the Sun, Roy has worked for the City of Jonesboro in a number of capacities, including as Director of Communications, Chief Operating Officer, Chief of Staff, and as Independent Consultant to the Mayor of Jonesboro. He has also been active in a number of professional organizations, such as serving on the board of the Arkansas Press Association and as past president of Arkansas AP Managers. He and his wife, Patricia, who is also an ASU journalism grad, they have 2 married daughters and 3 grandchildren. I think I'll just use that mic. Okay, you know, as teachers, we always have a plan B. If this doesn't work with technology, you wing it. Okay, next, seated next to Roy is Dr. Dorothy M Bland. Dr. Bland is a journalism professor at the University of North Texas, Mayborn School of Journalism, and a former dean with a passion for collaborative research, teaching, and service. Prior to joining UNT in 2013, she was a professor and journalism director at Florida A&M University. Altogether, she has about 15 years of experience in higher ed, and in 2019, she was honored as one of the top 35 women in higher ed by Diverse Issues in Higher Education magazine. Dr. Bland also has a quarter of a century experience in news companies and has produced journalism on all 6 continents and visited 49 states. Her industry experience includes working for USA Today, as well as news organizations ranging from the Commercial Appeal in Memphis to the Fort Collins Publisher, and performance as a publisher and a variety of other reporting awards. Dr. Bland earned her PhD from Florida State and an MBA from George Washington University, and of course, a bachelor's degree in journalism from Arkansas State. This proud former reporter and editor of the Herald is a Little Rock, Arkansas native. Next, we have Mrs. Shonda Washington. Shonda is a 1995 graduate of Arkansas State, where she served as editor of the Herald in 1994. She began her career in journalism in 1995 as a copy editor at the Courier-Journal, where she worked on the Metro and Business desk. In 1997, she joined the Washington Post as a sports copy editor, and during her 16-year tenure, she held several roles, including community editor, where she helped launch the paper's local living section. In 2013, Ms. Washington switched careers and served as Director of Communications in the Mayor's office at the D.C. government. She has supported 2 mayors and worked on the city's bid to attract Amazon's second headquarters. She is currently serving as the Public Affairs and Marketing Division Chief for the Department of Parks and Recreation in Prince George's County, Maryland. And on December 6th, she will rejoin D.C. government to work for the Office of the City Administrator. Next is Mrs. Gretchen Hunt. Ms. Hunt lives in Paragould and works for Paxton Media Group, serving as Operations Manager for the Times-Dispatch, a weekly newspaper in Walnut Ridge. She is also ad sales consultant for the Paragould Daily Press and assists with production of the Newport Independent, which are also Paxton Media publications. A May 1998 magna cum laude graduate of Arkansas State University, she began work at the Times-Dispatch shortly after earning her community journalism degree. And she was an 8-semester member of the Herald staff, holding multiple positions, including serving as editor during the fall semester of her senior year. At the conclusion of her studies, she received the Departmental Award for Journalism and was also selected as an Arkansas State University Distinguished Service Award winner, and spoke on behalf of her graduating class at the 1998 ASU commencement. During her 23 years at the Times-Dispatch, Ms. Hunt has worked as a reporter, managing editor, and now operations manager. In addition to putting out a weekly newspaper, she oversees the company's job printing business. She's active in a number of service organizations that include serving as past chair of the Lawrence County Chamber Board and being a member of the Beatles at the Ridge Committee, just to name a few. She and her husband, Jason, who is also an Arkansas State alum, have 2 sons, Conley Hunt, who is a freshman at ASU, and Coulter Hunt, who is a freshman at Greene County Tech High School. And to my farther, all the way to the end, our anchor down there is Mr. Lance Turner. Mr. Turner is editor at Arkansas Business. He joined Arkansas Business in May 1999 as a reporter, immediately after earning a degree in journalism from Arkansas State. He served as online editor at Arkansas Business from 2000 to 2021, overseeing content for Arkansas Business Publishing Group sites, including ArkansasBusiness.com, where he edited the Daily Reporter e-newsletter. He appears regularly on KTHV-TV, Channel 11, providing daily business news reports on the CBS affiliate's morning show, Wake Up Central. He has also been a panelist and guest host of Arkansas PBS's weekly public affairs program, Arkansas Week. In 1999, during his senior year at Arkansas State University, he served as editor of the Herald for 1 semester. This Arkansas native and his wife, Laura, have a 6-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. So once again, please join me in welcoming our distinguished panels who happen to be our alums. Okay, what we plan to do, I'm going to ask you a few questions and get the conversation going, and then we want to save a little time for anyone in the audience who might want to ask the panelists a question. And I believe Mr. Lars Roberts will take the mic, and you can come up here if you feel like walking so we can get it on camera. So we'll get started. Are y'all ready? Okay. When did, as you can see and everyone heard, you've got some really distinguished careers. When did you realize you wanted to get in the news business? Lance, don't look at me like that.
Well, in the 7th grade, my English teacher asked who wanted to try out for the press club. And anybody who tried out for the press club should come over here and you'll write a paragraph. Everybody else will go to the other side of the room and write 10 sentences. And I thought the paragraph was easier. So I've been in journalism ever since.
That's a great story. Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. I was just a naturally nosy and curious kid. However, I will share that I had a high school journalism teacher. Her name was Julia McGee. And I remember meeting Dr. Gamble when he came to recruit. Mrs. McGee said to me, she said, "Dorothy, you write well enough that people will pay to read your work." I said, "Oh, that's really cool." So I went home and told my mom, and my mom said, "Dee, that's nice. Go wash the dishes." So that's when I knew.
So I think I stumbled into it. I came to Arkansas State actually to be a business education major because I come from a family of teachers, and I thought that I would carry their legacy forward. But then it was actually a professor at Arkansas State, my freshman English professor, Dr. Smith. I still have the note. He left a note on my paper and he said, "I don't know what your major is, but if it's not journalism or something involving writing, you're in the wrong major." And so I switched. And so that's how I ended up going into a journalism career.
We'll see if this one works. And you can
Oh, okay.
We'll see. Okay, so Roy and I might be related because mine was the 8th grade, and so that was the first time I got involved in journalism, and I did journalism, newspaper, yearbook, pretty much all through junior high and high school. My 9th grade and 12th grade English teacher happened to be the same woman. She taught our 9th grade English class, and by the time we got to senior English, she had changed and was the senior English teacher, and also happened to be my Comp 1 and 2 teacher, because that was when they had first started concurrent with Arkansas State University at Nettleton High School. So Miss Joanne Steed, who is an inspiration to tons and tons and tons of youth in Northeast Arkansas, inspired me. I had written pretty much all my life, but she inspired me to write with a purpose, and I came as a journalism major, and it stuck.
I was the kid who was in his room typing up weather reports and putting the map on my door in my closet and giving the weather, and then taping radio shows in my room by myself with no one else, just me, and doing all the parts. And then also writing throughout high school, and I had some English teachers who were very encouraging of me then, and there was a journalism program at our high school, and so I was the editor of the Free Spirit at North Pulaski High School. And so I knew I wanted to do journalism. That was why I was attracted to Arkansas State, which has the premier journalism program. And when I came up here and took the tour and met Dr. Gamble and saw the building and the studio and all the stuff, I was sold, and it was an easy decision to come here. So.
All right. Okay. Okay. We'll start on that end. Lance, you go first this time. What would you say was one of your most memorable stories or moments while working at the Herald? You have that look again.
We had a few, I think, during our era, and Gretchen and I were sort of contemporaries, and we had a situation where there was I'm not going to tell this correctly, but there was a college that was going to be split in two or combined. Maybe they were going to combine the journalism college with with the Fine Arts College, I believe it was. We had an academic affairs chancellor here who was going to do that. And so that was a big story that we covered and covered really well. And actually, we were covering that story very quickly. This was pre-internet, so this is late 90s. We were printing out flyers with breaking developments of that story and hanging them on the Herald newspaper boxes, which was kind of crazy. We didn't have a website really yet, and so we weren't pushing e-newsletters, or we weren't doing notifications to your watch or anything just yet. So that was a pretty great story. And then we had the typical stuff where you write a negative story about a fraternity, and maybe they steal your newspapers. That happened a few times, and so those were always fun. But we had several like that, I think.
So while I was at the Herald, and I think you were at the Herald at that time, West Side happened. And it was a story for the Herald, for sure, but it was a story for everybody. You know, when West Side happened, it was a story for everybody. And we talked about that a couple of times today, and the fact that there were a lot of ASU students that were able to work for national media during that time because they were desperate to get information. And so they were calling our professors and trying to find students that they felt like could provide them with information. And I was telling some of them that the truth was that a lot of the information and the coverage that was provided by our students was much better than the information that was provided by the journalists that came in from out of the area because they knew the community, at least to some extent, from having been here. And I told the story that at the time, there was pasture right next to the college and cattle that grazed. And one of the national crews that had come in decided to shoot footage of those cattle in the field, and that's what they showed to represent what Jonesboro, Arkansas looked like. And they talked about this small rural community being torn asunder by this school shooting, which we were torn asunder, but it was very much a misrepresentation of what the community of Jonesboro was, but that was a huge learning experience for a lot of people to see, not only to be able to experience covering that kind of story, but to see how different the coverage was from different people.
So I actually have two stories. I'm going to tell two stories. One kind of speaks to the experience you truly gain as a journalist working for a college newspaper, because you literally get the opportunity to deal with real life controversial topics. And when I was editor, the topic was the president of ASU was going through some issues. We just keep it at that. And he had to step down, and even at the board meetings, like they pulled out the Herald and they would say, see, even in the Herald, it said you did blah, blah, blah. So we were like right up there with the Jonesboro Sun and right up there with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette being referenced as a point of record in terms of something that had happened that was quite detrimental to the university. So to be in the front lines of that was really amazing. But the other story that I'm going to say is really just kind of how Arkansas State, the Herald, learning under Dr. Gamble, and at the time it was Dean Shane. It really they really taught us about how, when you mess up, you got to fix it. And so the mess up that I made, to put it in the simplest of terms, is we redesigned the Herald, and to put it bluntly, it sucked. And Dr. Gamble did not mince words when he said it sucked. And we had to fix it. And we had to fix it quickly. And back then, you didn't have email, we didn't have cell phones, and so I got a note as the editor on the board that said, Shonda, I am very disappointed in the direction that you have taken this distinguished publication, and I expect you to return it to its glory. And best believe I did. And that is what real life journalism, work life, career life, any kind of life, that's the real thing. And for that, I am forever grateful to him, because when I face those challenges in my life now, I always look back and say, well, you know, you survived Dr. Gamble. You could survive anything.
Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful story. It's hard to top that one, Chandra. There are two that come to mind for me. And Paula Keeney, who's now in Maine running a mystery bookstore, I think. I remember I wrote a review on The Wiz, and it was not a favorable review. And it was commentary. It's an opinion. It's a review, right? Well, the students who were in theater at the time were not too happy with the review. So they marched into the Herald office, started tearing up the office, chairs, tables, you name it. And I didn't realize that I showed up like a half hour later because I had a class. I was ready for a good fight. But she said, Dorothy, calm down. So that's one story that I will always remember. I'm also eternally grateful to Dr. Gamble, because in your public affairs reporting class, I remember going to the state capitol. It's the first ticket that I ever got. My mom ringed me for it, so I will never forget that. But also, I'm eternally grateful for the trial coverage that we did in your class. I remember covering a rape trial, and that was a key turning point for me as a young journalist, because my sister said, well, Dee, do you want to go into business? Do you want to go into law? Just what do you think? And I remember whenever Dr. Hoskins saw me coming, it was like, oh my God, she's going to do another story about the administration. And I said, well, that's what we're being taught, is to question truth and question authority. And he was like, oh my God, not again. But he's probably rolling over in his grave to realize that he also was the dean who said, I don't think you should minor in business. And I was like, what? Be careful what you pour into students, because ultimately I got that MBA and I wound up running a company, which was sort of scary for him probably. So I'm going to turn over to you, Roy.
Well, covering university status, without a doubt, was the highlight of my A-State years as a student. And it's a very long story, and I won't try to give you the whole story, but for those of you who are younger, you may not understand how big an accomplishment it was for Arkansas State College to become a university. And we were the first college in Arkansas to reach that status. The University of Arkansas fought us all the way and did everything they could to stop it right up until the last vote. And that happened during my senior year, and we could actually put a panel together from some people here tonight who were part of covering that event. My wife, who was our co-editor, and H.T. Moore and Joel Gamble. Joel and I were part of the four-person team that went to Little Rock on the day of the final vote to cover whatever was going to happen, and we didn't really know then. We forgot to bring our cell phones, so we didn't have the ability to call it in. In fact, we were completely a letterpress operation, which meant that every line of type had to be set in lead. And you've seen the representation of the front page. That big headline was set in wood type. And Joel and I and Tom Manning and Victor Dixon were the four-person team that went to Little Rock. We didn't plan to stay overnight. We had to come back. We had to bring pictures back because the pictures then had to be developed and printed and made into cuts to get on the press. We had 2 pages of a special edition ready, but the first 2 pages were the coverage, and that's what we went down there for. And and Pat stayed here and ran the show in the print shop and newsroom. We came back in the snow. Tom was our driver, and he was trying to stay on the road. Joel was sitting beside him and trying to make sure he stayed on the road. and the road between here and Newport was hairy on a dry night, believe me, in those days. And I had borrowed Pat's manual portable typewriter to write what I could on the way back. Well, we didn't start back until nearly 5 o'clock, and so we had no light. Well, Victor was in the back seat with me, and we borrowed Tom's flashlight, and Victor held the flashlight while I typed as much of the lead story as I could until the batteries ran out. But we had to get back because there was no story and there were no pictures for that edition unless we got back. And we did get back maybe about midnight or later. I'm not sure which it was, but we got the story on the press. The press was rolling by 3 a.m., and we were the first newspaper to have the story. And so it was quite an accomplishment in those days to be able to do that and to cover a monumental story in A-State's history. Thank you.
Those are such awesome stories, and I'm a media historian. I can just see me using sharing those stories in class next semester. So the historian in me was just, oh my goodness, wow, so awesome. I wanted to ask you a question about some of the challenges in the field today, and this is for anybody who wants to jump out there. I know some of you have moved into government and other, using your skills in other ways. But if you feel like you want to address this question, feel free to do so. But what do you think are some of the challenges facing journalism and journalists today? Anyone?
The Washington Post has a theme that says, democracy dies in the darkness. And I am very, very concerned about misinformation and the spread of misinformation in our society. And I know that it's a very, very different world. And yes, I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all of that, and Twitter. I'm not tweeting tonight. However, I think that the search for truth, which is part of the SPJ Code of Ethics, is something that we all need to be very, very mindful of. And we are the only industry, the press, that's actually recognized in the First Amendment. And we should never, ever forget that. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I'm a working journalist. Been a working journalist for 23 years in the same publication, but my job has changed a lot. So there's a lot of challenges, and there's still a lot of future. You know, a lot of people say there's not a future, but when I graduated when I started at ASU in 1994, everybody said, why on earth would you want to get a degree in journalism and go to work for newspapers? In 5 years, there's not going to be any newspapers. You know, that would have been 2000. Not, help me, man.
A long time ago.
It would have been a long time ago. And so, 23 years after I graduated, I'm still working in newspaper. I think the challenge for journalists that we have to remember is that our job is to inform our readers appropriately. So I work for a weekly newspaper in small-town Arkansas. So my job is to give my readers what they want to know about Lawrence County, Arkansas. And so if they open my paper and everything in it is about somewhere other than Lawrence County, Arkansas, then I'm not doing my job. And so I told a lot of students today and yesterday that my goal each week is for, if a reader reads my paper from cover to cover, they have a pretty good idea of what's going on in Lawrence County, Arkansas. They know who died, they know who got arrested, they know where the church bazaar is on Saturday, they know who got on the AB honor roll, and they know who won the football game. And, that's my job as a community journalist. Other journalists' jobs are different. So that's our challenge. We have to figure out what our job is, and then we have to do it to the best of our ability.
I agree with that. I think obviously the big challenge is that the business model that we relied on for so long for the big part of how we do journalism just isn't workable today, and is less workable by the day or by the year, right? And we could blame the internet for a lot of that because it completely just dismantled the entire print journalism business model. But there are pieces that are working. I'm optimistic that what we are doing at Arkansas Business and Arkansas Business Publishing Group is working. We're a niche publisher, so it's some of the same vein as what Gretchen is talking about. We have very niche, very defined audiences. At Arkansas Business, it's a very narrow audience of business decision makers, and so we deliver the news straight to that audience, and we try to give them something that they haven't gotten or seen anywhere else. And as long as we can deliver on that promise, I think we'll be okay. I think the delivery methods will change and are changing. It used to come in print, still does come in print. We've got an all-time high paid subscriber base right now, in fact. But we know that day is going to come when it doesn't primarily arrive in print. And so we're preparing the way for what that looks like. And we may be doing it on phones, we may be doing it on watches, we may be doing it on VR, AR, whatever, but as long as we're delivering stuff that they can't find anywhere else, stuff that's relevant to them and relevant to that audience, I think we're going to be okay. But it is very hard, it is very challenging, and it's a difficult problem for sure that I don't have the answer for, certainly.
Well, the challenge for every newspaper today is to stay in business. And the only purpose of a business is to make a profit. And that's become immensely difficult for newspapers all over the country. I'm a newspaper man through and through and always will be. I retired before things started getting as bad as they are today. 2 years before I retired, I had 35 people in the newsroom at the Sun. Today there are 7. And that's why you're not getting as much as you did before. Some of you know that the Sun moved its offices last week to a much smaller building. The building we were in was built to house 200 or so employees. They now have about 13, so they're in smaller quarters. I've been helping the Historical Society and the County Library try to preserve some of the historical records that they had to leave behind because they've got no place to put them. And so I spent a good part of my day today on that project. And I was in the Sun, which is a ghost town now, and the building is a ghost town. I went in the press room last week, and the press is idle. So actually, we were moving some things out. I hope Pat doesn't notice the 20 boxes of old newspapers that I brought home today, but we're hoping to find a place for bound volumes of newspapers, old newspaper clippings, microfilm, negatives of big news events and small as well, and proof books and daily journals and all that sort of thing that have been left behind because they no longer have a place for them. And that's the challenge of newspapers today, is to be able to stay in business.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'll close it out. I think I got a bit of a different perspective because now that I'm on the dark side, working in PR, I need newspapers, and that's no joke. I need reporters. I have found that when I'm trying to tell the story of whatever person that I'm representing, that it carries more weight when it's coming from a publication, when it's coming from a news publication, especially a reputable one. So for me, I just need journalists to continue. I just need it to continue. But I do think there are two things that I want our future journalists to remember is, one, you are recording history, and you are leaving behind putting forward, actually, to the generations to come what happened today. And that's very important. We need to protect that because we need to make sure that the kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids, everybody sitting in this room knows what happened at Arkansas State in, what year are we in, 2021? Like, they need to know that. So hold to that and make sure that you're delivering on that promise. The second thing, which I wish I had done when I was coming up in journalism, is learn the business. Learn the business. Because what I saw at the Courier Journal, what I saw at the Washington Post, was a struggle of journalists who are copy editors, news editors, photographers that don't know the business. So learn the business. Take a business class. I'm currently at Howard University earning my executive MBA, and I wish I had done that 5-10 years ago. Learn the business. So record history and learn the business.
I would just like to add that I think that there are multiple platforms, and that's something that's dramatically different. And you need to be able to tell stories on multiple platforms because it's all about audience and engaging the audience. And Gretchen, you spoke so eloquently about telling the story of the community. There will always be opportunities to tell stories. So you are storytellers. At the same time, be close to the communities and the audiences that you're trying to serve because you can't tell those stories if you don't know those stories.
Okay, you know, the second part of the title of this panel is Why Journalism Matters Even More Today. I believe that's the title. So before I see if the audience has any questions, I think you all have really answered that question, but would you like to say anything else about why journalism matters even more today? Why is it even more important today?
Well, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. I'm biased to print journalism because I am a print journalist. But I believe that people overall still believe that by the time it makes it to print in a newspaper, it's supposed to be correct. Is it always? No, because we're human and sometimes we make mistakes. But we fact check, we proofread, we're careful, and print news is a little bit slower. So we live in a world where a lot of news is fast, and we kind of expect that it's going to change. This is just what we know right now. We have breaking news to be updated later. You know, I told the kids today, you'll hear a report, there was a highway, an accident on Highway 15, 2 vehicles involved, someone may be dead, but we're not sure yet, we'll tell you later. Well, we're not going to put that in the newspaper. You know, if we put it in the newspaper, if they're dead, they're dead. If they're not dead, we're not putting it in there. You know, by the time you get it in print, it's supposed to be the fact and it's supposed to be truth. And so I think that is still so important to have that source where you can have faith that when you read it, it is what it is. And so I've been preaching it for the last couple of days.
Yes, she has.
Well, I think, too, I think one of the things we're starting to miss in our society is this common truth or this baseline of information that we all sort of kind of agree is reality, and the truth. And from that's where we build our democracy. That's where we have our conversations that make policy and create businesses and create economies and create communities when you have these common sets of facts. And I think as we see that falling away, I think we're seeing the consequences of that every day. So journalism is important to that. Journalism has to find a way to continue to tell those stories and continue to communicate those truths because, I mean, democracy is dependent upon it, and society is dependent upon it. And you see other parts of the world where you don't have those common truths and you don't have those common sets of facts and this this common arena of thought and argument and discussion, then bad things happen. And so I don't know what the answers are, but journalism has to be a part of that. That's part of how we make our world and make it work.
I'm going to add one more thing.
Okay.
If you want to know how important a newspaper is or a school is, go to a community that lost theirs and ask them if it's missed. And I guarantee you they'll tell you it's missed.
Anyone else? Why journalism?
Well, a democracy requires an informed electorate. And what worries me today is that our electorate is getting its information from sources that confirms what they want to know, not what the truth might be. And we as journalists cannot let that happen. Whatever our medium might be for the future, whatever the media might be for the future, we've got to stay the course and make sure that we can tell both sides of the story and get the word out there. Otherwise, there is no democracy.
Your point's very well taken. The role of the journalist is to inform the public. And that's a service, but that's a very serious responsibility. The other thing that I want to point out is the importance of media literacy. And one of the concerns that I have as a journalist, as a professor, is the fact that we have students, we're often operating in echo chambers. That's not sustainable for democracy. And Roy's point about an informed democratic society is crucial to the foundation of our country and our future. Look what happened on January 6th. We all need to be awake, present, listening, and asking critical questions.
Okay. At this time, would anyone in the audience like to ask our panelists a question? Okay. Come on up, Dr. Dugan. He's going to bring you the mic.
We know that's true.
But if this will help, the history of the newspapers on colleges in Arkansas is somewhat troubling, especially when we look at Fayetteville, which was expelling students for protesting, including a future United States congressman. And I need to make this point, too, because it's been somewhat neglected, that the Herald got its own press, its own linotypes, printed itself 15 years in advance of Fayetteville. And that deserves an important bit of recognition. But to come to the heart of my question, when I was being interviewed here prior to 1970, second summer term, there was a controversy going on this campus because Carl R. Ring was trying to fire 40 faculty members because one female had gotten in the family way. The question is, how much freedom over the years has the Herald had to cover controversial events that affect the university?
Y'all want me to start? Okay, I just told the story. You're right. I just told, wait, I want to double check the question though. You said how much freedom? Is that what you said? How much freedom? How much practical freedom? So I didn't feel any pressure from the university to be careful in how we cover that story. None, actually. In fact, we were treated like a regular newspaper, which we were. And we had front row seat at the board hearing about it. We were able to interview the people who every other reporter was allowed to interview. So it really was, when I say that the Herald really teaches you real life experiences, it really did, like to the very core. And I even, interestingly enough, there was a board of trustee member, I can't remember his name, but after they had a vote or something, I saw him in the hallway, and he pulled me to the side, and he, wanted to have a conversation with me, and then I said, "Is this on the record?" And he said, "No, this is not on the record." But had I been an experienced journalist, I didn't need his permission because he was talking to me freely. So I could have taken that information and ran with it. But I'm in college, so I didn't know. But I think I think we all should give Arkansas State University a round of applause for the investment it does in journalism, for the investment it does in the Herald, for its commitment to providing the technology, to providing the resources. I'm sure there's room for it to grow. There's room for every place to grow. But really, there are community newspapers that are not around 100 years later. So I think we need to take a moment today and commit to it going into the future to recognize the value of having this publication for people like those of us at the table and those of them at that table and the ones that are going to be sitting at that table 100 years from now.
I just want to bring to your attention an article, a brief one, that in like times of yore, that was in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette today. 50 years ago today, the first chapter in Arkansas of Sigma Delta Chi, the Society for Professional Journalists, was founded at Arkansas State University.
While you're looking for somebody else, I want to add, I was telling the kids earlier, they asked me when I left ASU and I got a real job, because working for the Herald for 8 semesters, it felt like a real job, I'm going to tell you. Was I nervous the first time I had to actually write a real news story for a real newspaper, and hadn't ever really thought about the fact that that's all I did the whole time I was in college, was write real news stories for a real newspaper. I mean, it's a lab, and you're a student, and you have teachers, you have advisors, but it's a real newspaper. I covered government, SGA, and the Faculty Association. I covered controversy. She was my editor. I told them, it was funny because it's amazing that the students today still know about the controversy, because I said, while I was a student at ASU, I covered the president. And one of them said, "Oh, when he got in trouble, all that stuff in his office and all that." And I said, no, the president of the United States, not the president of the college. So, really, did everything as a staff member of the Herald that you do as a staff member of a professional newspaper. And I walked right out of the Herald and right into a newspaper, and it was seamless. It's a wonderful program.
I agree with you. Oprah says college is preparation for life, and I think that the ASU Herald helped prepare me for my work life. I want to talk to the students. I want y'all to stand up. Yeah, I'm here. I want to talk to y'all. There's 6 P's that I think prepared me well for life based on my experience at the Herald. And the first P I want to talk about is practice. You're going to write every day of your life. And whether, you wind up in print, broadcast, what have you. I remember, how can I say this? I've had students say, well, I'm just going to be an anchor. Guess what? Oprah had to write, Katie Couric has to write, they're going to write, okay? The second P I want to talk about is planning. You're going to get really, really good at planning because you can't get from point A to point B or C or D, F, wherever you want to go unless you have a plan. So if you don't have a plan, that's a plan for failure. You have a plan, and you're getting good at planning based on the experience that you're getting at the Herald. I didn't know what my purpose was when I came to ASU. I just knew that I liked to write. And thank you, Dr. Gamble, for helping and making sure I took that public affairs reporting class, because that helped cement my purpose. The other thing that I'm going to say is the fourth P I want to talk about is perseverance. I want you to know that I sent out 50 letters when I was getting ready to graduate. And I had interviewed with people, and I wasn't quite sure, but I knew that I was not going back to Little Rock because my mama said she had 2 more kids to raise. So persevere. You're going to get some no's, and you're going to have some yeses, but make sure that you persevere. I want to talk about people. You're going to meet all kinds of people, and that's one of the great things about being a journalist. And I'm going to tell this story. I remember when I was working at the Arkansas Democrat, and I told Bob Starr that I had a story about a governor whose name happened to be Clinton. And he said, "You're a nice girl. We don't talk about things like that." Well, y'all know the rest of the story. I don't have to talk about Monica. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is power. You have the power based on the work that you do to impact and change the world. That's part of why I became a journalist, because I know that when people read your work, you have the power to change the world and make it a better place. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and continue writing and reporting.
Tex Plunkett's magic formula for teaching journalism was to teach the fundamentals and give the students practice in applying those fundamentals. That meant in our classes writing stories for publication, editing stories for publications. In the years that I was a student, he never told us not to cover a story. Neither did Joel when he took over as advisor in my senior year. In my years as advisor from 70 to 75, I never told a student editor not to cover a story. We wanted them to practice journalism. That's part of the way you learn, and you do so by writing and editing for consumption of the public. That's a whole lot different than just writing for class. And that's very important. Now, I do remember one time when one of our student editors, while I was an advisor, did an interview with the president of the university, and at the end of the interview, the president decided this is off the record. And so he didn't have a story, but we didn't tell them that they didn't have stories, and that essentially, you can't do that if you're really teaching journalism.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? If not, please join me once again in thanking our distinguished panelists. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Rollins.
Thank you, Dr. Fears. So, the last thing I want to do tonight is we've had a great opportunity to talk about and reflect upon the history of the Herald and some promises that we're going to continue to operate the Herald and by the principles that have been taught by Dr. Gamble and others who are present here tonight. So what I'd like to do in terms of ending the program, I'd like to invite the current staff of the Herald to come up on the stage and introduce themselves. This is the future of journalism, the future of the Herald. So I'm just going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves, and hold your applause for all of them until they have a chance to do that. So.
Hi, my name is Alex Clark. I am a multimedia journalism major, and I am the current life page editor for the Herald. I have worked for the Herald for about 3 years. I started as a staff writer in 2018. I just wanted to do the horoscopes, and then in 2019, I ended up becoming the editor of the life page. I'm really grateful for all the opportunities that I've had with the Herald, and I am very grateful for Ms. Combs as our advisor because she has been so supportive and kind to all of us. And I am so honored that everyone is here tonight and that we could be here to celebrate this historic event that is the 100th anniversary of the Herald.
Hi, my name is Lily Kabibi-Wilkin, and I'm the opinion editor for the Herald. Like Alex, I started as a staff writer in my freshman year, fall of 2018, and then became the opinion editor in spring of 2019. As a music composition major, I'm sure no one was expecting much of me. But Ms. Combs never gave up on me. Every week, every AP style error, every typo, every forgetting to put the word major in my byline, so I said I was a freshman music composition. You know, she never gave up on me. She always gave me another chance. She always gave me more feedback. She always gave me more to build upon. And I definitely would not be the writer, the editor, the student, the journalist I am today without her. And I'm super grateful for everything she's done, everything she's given us, from just her presence in the office to her advice as a teacher and as a staff advisor to the, you know, insisting on giving us rides back to our dorm when we stay in the office a little bit too late. Just her warmth and her guidance have really helped all of us to continue on and continue working as a staff together. Earlier this evening, I had the opportunity to speak with a news reporter doing a story on the event tonight, and he asked me, what keeps you coming back every semester to work at the Herald? And I said, it's our camaraderie, it's our love for each other, it's our friendship, and most of all, it's Miss Combs. I don't think any of us would have stuck out as long as we have without her, and she's one of the things I'm going to miss most when I, fingers crossed, graduate next semester.
Hello everyone, I'm Hannah Risker and I'm the photo editor. Unlike a lot of these people, I am not a journalist by any means, but I am still incredibly honored to be a consistent photographer. I've worked here as an editor for 2 years and I've been a photographer here for 3, and I can say that it is a great coincidental honor to be here for the 100th. I'm very thankful for all of the editors and all of the photographers and the writers that have come before me, and I'm incredibly thankful to see all of you in the panel today and hear your wise words from it. This paper has been one of the big foundations for me in college. This is probably one of my favorite parts about college, even though Tuesday deadlines come so fast, and 3 a.m. on Tuesday deadlines come even faster. It is such a wonderful time with our incredible advisor, Ms. Combs, who is in the back, obviously crying because we love her so much and we have so much respect for her. One of the big jokes that we have in our office is that we're often handed down our positions unknowingly. So sometimes we're told, hey, come up and work on the office in room 225 in the comm, and we get there expecting, just an assignment, and we're usually told that day, hey, congratulations, you're an editor. So she has been the great transition there from just a complete amateur photographer, writer, journalist, to an editor now, and we're all very proud of our positions, and we're all proud of the papers that you have in front of us, and it's all of the people in front of us and the stepping stones that you gave us that really allowed us to be here for 100 years. So thank you very much for that.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Robinson. I'm the sports editor. This is my second semester with the Herald. I'm very lucky to work with everybody. Like everyone said, we have a really great friendship, and we have an even greater advisor. Ms. Combs has been like the utmost patient with all of us, through AP style, through just teaching us everything. But I always knew that I could go to her if I had any issue. I kind of came in at kind of a weird time. I hadn't written for the Herald before. I just came on as an editor. And Ms. Combs was just super patient and really great. And so were my coworkers. They were so patient because I asked every question in the book, like, how can I log onto this computer? What do? I don't know how any of this works. And they're all so great. So thank you to all of them and to Ms. Combs and everyone for being here tonight.
My name is Jonathan Shopler. I'm the news editor of the Herald, and I am indeed a freshman this year at Arkansas State, first semester. Right before classes started, the classes started on Tuesday, I walked into Ms. Combs' office on Monday, and she goes, "Oh, wow, great, here's your desk." And from that day on, I walked into that office absolutely terrified, and when I left, I was still a little terrified. In high school, I had a teacher that I was very, very close to. She supported me through high school, supported my dreams and my visions. And I recently, a few months after I started at the Herald, I called her and we were talking, catching up on college, and I said, "I think I've found my new you." And so Ms. Combs, she supports us every week. She's ready to go to fight for us when somebody comes into the Herald asking about why we did this, why we did that. She saw a freshman that came into their office before classes had even started and gave him a chance. And for that, I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this amazing team. We put together an amazing publication each week. Sometimes we're in there till 3 a.m., but hey, it gets done. So thank you.
I'm Courtney Edwards. I'm the current editor-in-chief of the Herald, and I actually graduate in December. And this is only my second semester at the Herald. Last semester, I was a staff writer. And by the way, Ms. Combs, you weren't supposed to know about that 3 a.m. thing, but anyway. She is more than just an advisor, I think, to all of us. I'd say she is also a friend. And one example of that is when she knows I'm going to be traveling to go see my boyfriend, it's like a 4-hour drive, she always makes sure that I text her when I'm safe. And I don't have another advisor that is like that. And I just want to say we all appreciate you so much, and I'm so thankful for the Herald. I came here thinking I was going to be a broadcast journalist when I came out, and now I'm leaving in December thinking I could do any of this, and I would be happy because I love it all. Thank you, guys.
We just want to say, Ms. Combs, we do have a very small gift for you that we hid under the stage somewhere. So if you'll walk up and accept it from us, thank you.
It's so warming to hear how Professor Combs has continued the legacy of excellent faculty advisors for the Herald. Of course, I never knew Tex Plunkett, but I've read a lot about Tex Plunkett and how Tex would tell his students, to call him Tex. He was going to be their advisor. He was going to hold them to high standards, but he also wanted to be their friend. I've read a lot of things coming from people about Joel Gamble and his years as an advisor and the amazing influence that he had. And of course, today we have Professor Combs. Before Professor Combs, we had Bonnie Thrasher, and of course, when she passed away, people came from all around to talk about the influence that she had on them as well. So Arkansas State has been blessed with people who are passionate about the news, about newspapers, and about their students, most of all. And I think we've all been blessed because of that. Thank you. So that concludes our evening in terms of the scheduled programs. You're all free to, it looks like, well, no, I take that back. I was going to say, there was still a lot of macaroni and other things there, but it looks like they've kind of taken some of that away. But there might still be some stuff, if you haven't had a chance to get some of the macaroni bar. But the other thing that we've got tonight is we've cut a cake. It's our Centennial birthday cake. So please get a slice of cake. Enjoy each other's company for a little while longer. Make sure Dr. Gamble gets a chance to see you if he hasn't seen you already. And then don't forget your gifts and other things that we have afterwards. Thanks again to the panel. Appreciate all of your time.